Hello, I'm Terry David Mulligan, and this is Mulligan Stew, the podcast, music, film, food, and wine. We do a lot of music. We have done food and wine, but this time it's film. I'm a member of the Broadcast Film Critics Association, and as such, I get to screen a lot of films. When I saw Green Book, I really wanted to see this film for two reasons. One, I knew what the Green Book was. It was the sort of Bible for African-American artists traveling the United States of America in and around the 40s, 50s, and especially the 60s. The Green Book told black artists where they could sleep, where they could expect to get gas for their cars, where not to go, where to eat, what parts of the town they couldn't go into, all of the things that could get them in trouble. This was Jim Crow America at the time, 1962. Tony Vallelonga worked at the Copacabana Club for almost 12 years, and as such got to meet everybody from Sinatra on down. But he did meet Dr. Don Shirley, a black artist who was world-traveled, was a classical pianist, but he knew his jazz as well. There came a time when the Copa had to close. So Tony the Lip was out of a job, and he took on the role of being the driver for Dr. Don Shirley as he toured America, and especially the southern states. They both knew what was coming in front of them, and thus the story begins. Viggo Mortensen plays Tony Vallelonga, and Mashershala Ali plays Dr. Don Shirley, plays him very well. The film has been nominated for 5 Golden Globe Awards. It will most certainly be up for the Academy Awards as well. And so it's a pleasure to actually talk to Nick Vallelonga, the oldest son of Tony the Lip, Tony Vallelonga, who had a huge hand in getting this film made by Peter Farrelly. He helped to write the script. He interviewed his father so that Vito could hear his father talk. He interviewed Dr. Don Shirley about his side of the story, and it's on screen now. It's a great film. It's called Green Book, and here's the story from the man who actually put it all together, Nick Vallelonga. So this morning, Nick wakes up, and the Golden Globes are announced, and he has won 5 Golden Globe nominations. Green Book was nominated for 5 awards in the following categories: Best Picture, Musical or Comedy; Best Director, Peter Farrelly; Best Screenplay, our guest Nick Vallelonga, Brian Curry, and Peter Farrelly; Best Actor, Musical or Comedy, Viggo Mortensen; Best Supporting Actor, Mashershala Ali. How about that? It's quite a day in the life of Nick Vallelonga. Quite a day. I'm talking to Nick the day that they announced the Golden Globe nominations. Where were you this morning when those nominations went by, Nick?
I was home. I thought I would sleep for a while, and then I thought, I'll try to get up at 5 a.m., but I didn't sleep, so I was up. And it was the first part of the announcement was only online, and that's when they announced the first category that we got into, which was Best Screenplay. And it was pretty exciting. I mean, I kind of didn't really expect it. I thought the other areas would get in. It's such a a lot of great films out there in the world. So I was caught off guard and very surprised by it and honored by it.
Have you cleaned your tuxedo?
I got to get the mothballs.
You got to do, because this is a long run you're going to be on. This is a fantastic. This is fantastic. Congratulations for the Golden Globe nominations. The Broadcast Film Critics Association is coming. All the other award shows, and then the Oscars, and you're going to be sitting there. You are. Well,
I appreciate that. I mean, it may sound a little corny, but who thinks of awards? I've done a lot of independent films. And I've been acting and writing, producing my whole life and just sort of banging around. And this is the first time I did anything on this level. And that's also gotten this sort of attention and acclaim. So, first of all, to get a movie made about my father, to me, that's the win right there. So all of this is just, as they say, icing on the cake and quite amazing. And again, pretty honored. And I'm really more happy from, that my dad and I got it out there. It's more emotional because it's a family thing,
Of course.
Now, not just another movie.
Define in 30 seconds, if you will. I'm sure you're going to get this one down, Pat. What the Green Book was and is.
Green Book is a book that was written by Victor Green, who's an African-American postal worker from Harlem. It was written in the mid-30s, I think 1936 to about 1966. And it was basically a book that told African-Americans where they could go travel, where they could eat, what roads were safe, where they could get gas, where they could get motels that they were allowed to stay in. And it was a guidebook because there were lots of places they couldn't eat. They couldn't stop at gas stations. I think Esso, which is now Exxon, was the only gas station they could use. And they had that book in those Esso stations. So it was a helping guide for African Americans to get through. It was for the whole country, but at first it was really for the South, where the segregation was worse. But it was a book for the country, and it helped them navigate as they traveled through the United States.
Now, Nick, you are one of the writers. You were very much a part of the creation of this script and this story. But this story has been in your family since you can remember, right?
Oh, absolutely. I was 5 when it actually took place. And then as an adult, hearing the story from my dad, and then, in my 20s when I realized, I was becoming an actor and I wanted to write and make films and possibly direct, I thought this would make a fantastic movie. So that's when I sort of took it seriously. I studied my father, and I tape recorded him, started writing it all down, and then he said, we have to talk to Dr. Shirley about it, and I spoke to him and got his side of the story. And then my mother came to me and said, if you're really serious, come here. And she pulled out a box, and she had all these letters that my father wrote her on this trip. And if you haven't seen the film, it's a road trip when my father goes away, and part of it is that my mother made him write a letter to her, and she had all those letters saved. So that was a wealth of information, and it was fascinating. So I knew, okay, this is a movie I want to make.
She pulled out, Nick, she pulled out a box. Those are the best words any script writer or any actor could ever get their hands on. That's fantastic.
Yes.
You know that. That's just gold.
Her. We owe her big time. Yes.
Now this story, Nick, Hollywood. You know that when somebody says this is based on a real life story, you know that Hollywood will play with that story. And they have the story. They've got you. They've got your father's words. And they've got the letters and everything. This is pretty close to how it went down. But also you put it in the hands of Peter Farrelly, right? Who is literally he and his brother. They're literally they specialize in road films, and this in its essence, once it gets rolling, is a road film. So how did you keep that story intact all the way to the end?
Well, it was something that I always thought I would do myself because I've directed some independent films. So I said, when I can finally get this done, I want to do it myself. But I told the story to another screenwriter, actor, friend of mine, Brian Hayes Curry, and he thought it was unbelievable. And we talked about writing it together. And I thought, maybe it would be a good idea maybe to have someone else's viewpoint there with me. And then he told the story to Pete Farrelly, who he had worked with as an actor in several of Pete's films. So Pete loved it and wanted to meet me. And I was a little hesitant because I said I want to do it myself. But I met with Pete, and I loved the guy and his passion for the project. And something just clicked in me. And I said, put your ego aside, and he'd be great to direct this. He's an amazing director, he's a brilliant director. And even though, they made a certain style of comedy, and I never thought about that part of it. I just thought he's a great director. He gets it. We can make this on a much bigger level than I could probably ever get it done at. And, he said, let's write it together. Let's produce it together, because he felt he needed me there with him, and I'd produced films anyway. So I was a part of the whole thing. So it wasn't like I just handed it off and then we changed it. So we worked on it together and produced it together, and he went and made a brilliant film. I couldn't be more thrilled and happy. And look at the result. We get this type of accolades. It's quite amazing.
Nick Vallelonga is the co-writer of Green Book, as well as the real-life son of Tony Vallelonga, who Viggo Mortensen plays in the film. And I've tried to explain what the Green Book is, but more importantly, 1962, before the Civil Rights Act, before things changed for the better in the United States of America. A white guy working a club, an Italian in New Jersey, gets in a car with a black pianist, a genius pianist, and drives him not just through the north of the states, but into the deep south. They both knew what was coming. What part of that story in particular, what was most important in that arc of the story, Nick, that you wanted to tell?
Most important for really the whole film was to tell the truth of what happened on this particular trip. I mean, obviously we did some creative license, as you mentioned earlier, but really no creative license as far as what I call them the vignettes, the incidents that happen and occur. We had to connect the dots. We moved some things around. This trip in the film is we see 2 months of it, but they went on for about a year and a half total. So I took some other stories that might have happened later on. We combined them, but they're all true. And I think that was really what, if people relate to it and the reactions we get, I think that's the reason. Because if we manipulated the audience and made up stuff, it wouldn't ring true. And so it was very important to Pete and myself and Brian and everybody that we remain true to the story. And it's about the friendship. It's about the two guys in the car. And that's what we wanted to tell. And through them, yes, you know what's going on around in the world as far as the racism goes, etc. So it's about that, but it's also about their relationship in the heart and how two people can change each other for the better.
It's called The Green Book. It's Universal Pictures. It's out. You're going to see it. You're going to be hearing a lot about it. Nick Vallelonga is the co-writer of Green Book, as well as the son of the real-life Tony Vallelonga, who Viggo Mortensen plays in the film. Did your father tell you, or must have told you, why he did this, why he decided to go on the road? Was it initially, was it just a job, or was there something else involved?
My father, it was just a job at the beginning. He needed to pick up a job. The couple was closed for, I think it was renovations at the time, and it was a job. And he thought it would be interesting, but he knew he'd be away a while. And he told my mother, if it doesn't work out, I turn around, I come home. He says, but we could use the money. But he really loved it, and he began to really bond with Dr. Shirley. And Dr. Shirley told me that, he needed someone like my father. He was also fascinated by my father. He had never really met anyone quite like him. And he had a couple doctorates, like psychology, music, liturgical arts. And I guess the psychology part of it kicked in, because he said he was studying my father. He says, I've never seen a guy like this. So they learned from each other in a lot of ways. Each one had their positives, and each one had some negatives. And we try to show that in the film. But really, it's about the change that happened to my father when he saw the racism, when he was really confronted with it firsthand. He was outraged by it, and it changed him forever. Changed the way he acted towards people. Not that he ever was a bad guy, but racism is racism, and not that he was how much of a racist was he? He was a great man, really nice to everyone. But it was sort of like he was those were the times. Those people
That's right.
said and did certain things. That's not an excuse. So luckily, he learned and changed, and that's what the whole point of this. Yeah. He really changed after this trip.
They changed
after his friendship,
and they changed each other. Nick, I mean, for example, Jersey Tony teaches snobby Shirley to eat fried chicken, and then check out the radio with Fats Domino and the incredible soundtrack, Little Richard, all those guys, those cats, and then Shirley helps Tony write the letters back to Dolores.
Yes. He helped my father in lots of ways, and Shirley, it wasn't that he was illiterate to this type of music, but he was so obsessed with his own music that he wasn't aware of a lot of this music. So my father exposed him to a lot of that sort of life. And my father was a lover of life, eating, drinking, laughing, talking. He was all external, and
Yep.
Shirley was all internal. He was such a genius. So he opened him up to more things, and Shirley refined my father in things. But the most important thing is that they became these friends, these complete opposites that found a way to break through these barriers, and it shows what can happen if people communicate and talk to each other. So that's why I thought that was the heart of the story. And then Pete, as a director, he honed in on that too. He said, "Listen, we can go outside and go into politics and what was going on in the world and the country. You're going to see that anyway through their eyes.
Sure.
Let's keep it about the two guys in the car." And that's what we did.
It's called the Green Book. Nick Vallelonga is the co-writer of Green Book, as well as the son of the real-life Tony Vallelonga, who Viggo Mortensen plays in the film. The thing about a road movie, Nick, is that, and I think you know this, and that is that it puts your main characters in the lives of people that they would never have met in a million years if they didn't get in a car and drive to the next town and then step out and all of a sudden you're dealing with racism or someone taking you in. There's that wonderful chemistry and fish out of water thing that's happening there, right?
Yes. It has all those elements. It has the opposites, the odd couple. People say, some people say it's like a reverse driving with Stacey. In a sense, it is. But when I had the story, there was no driving with Stacey. That film had never come out. So I've had it before that. And that's a great movie. But it has all those elements about it. The main thing is the heart of it. I think that's really what's important. Hope.
I'll tell you what's at the heart of it. The heart of it is the Italians. It's the Italian family. Italians in film. There's always been Italians in film. They went, you cast an Italian to play an Italian, except when you get to The Godfather, and you got Brando, who's Irish, right? And
right.
And so, but Viggo Mortensen was not entirely convinced that this script, that he could pull this off, and this was a script for him to do and play the lead in. But you brought him to dinner. What happened at the dinner table at your house or at the restaurant?
We took him to, my brother has a restaurant in Franklin Lakes, New Jersey called Tony Lips, named after my father. Italian restaurant, pizzeria. So we took Viggo there, and what was supposed to be a little lunch turned out to like a 6-hour feast. And it was there he met, really got to know me and my brother and my uncles and cousins. And luckily, he saw something and felt it, and we thought he was the guy. And you mentioned The Godfather. Yeah. Marlon Brando was not Italian. So when Pete brought up Viggo, I thought, well, Viggo was sort of our generation's Marlon Brando. He could do this. And he got convinced at that dinner, and I got convinced, and he took it from there. I mean, what an amazing transformation he did. And he did have the tapes of my dad that I made, all that research. He had access to our family. Everyone talked to him. He hung around us, picked up things from us. But also later in life, my father went on to become an actor. So there was a lot of film on my father. He was on The Sopranos for 3.5 seasons. He played Carmine, the New York crime boss on The Sopranos. So even though he was older, Viggo had that footage, some footage from the Pope of Greenwich Village and Goodfellas and other things like that. So he was able to pull from all that in our family, and then he made it his own, and he was just, amazing. He did it. If you want to know what my father was like when he was younger, that's him.
That's him. By the way, the soundtrack, killer soundtrack, man. Killer. It's fantastic.
Amazing soundtrack. Chris Bowers, the composer, also just what an amazing job he did. He's a young kid. I say he's the next Quincy Jones. He's just awesome. He also did some of the piano work in the film for Mashershala. Mashershala did some, and Chris did some of the real intricate parts. And then Chris wrote the score, and then which he did brilliantly. And then we had some of Donald Shirley's original music, and then some other music from the era. And I think they did a fantastic job with that, because it wasn't the normal songs. You got to hear a lot of different music styles from that era, and really beautiful stuff.
Listen, it's called The Green Book. It's Universal Pictures. It's out. You're going to see it. You're going to be hearing a lot about it. Nick Vallelonga is the co-writer of Green Book, as well as the son of the real-life Tony Vallelonga, who Viggo Mortensen plays in the film. That's the most important thing. Here's the big question, Nick. I know this is just unfolding in front of you, and every day is going to be just unbelievable on this run that you're about to take off on. But how is it possible that this story from 1962 that's been bouncing around in your bones all those years, is it possible that it can help heal what's going on in the United States today?
Well, again, that's a pretty big undertaking. It would be nice if it starts that conversation, and if people, walk out realizing how insane what's been going on is. I think it shows how far we've come. I think, people can see even with 50 years ago, things were still happening like this, and outrageous that is. And people who don't know about it can learn from it, and there's still people around who lived it. And we have gotten better. We always get better, but we're not there yet. We still need to do more work. It's still not great. So I think if the film does anything, it shows we have to just come together and talk. I mean, human beings are human beings. That's how I look at it. Everyone is the same, and we have to communicate. And I think through communication and just being open, that's when the change comes. And that's what the film shows. Communicate, be open to each other. And that's when you can see other people's hearts and you realize, wow, everyone's the same. It's crazy that we still have to say that. It's such a simple idea, but it needs to be done. So hopefully this film will open up a communication. Maybe you walk out feeling hopeful and a little uplifted. And it might be old-fashioned. Like some say, it's an old-fashioned movie, feel-good movie. Well, we need a feel-good movie once in a while, and hopefully this is it.
The world needs a feel-good movie right now. Nick, here's your last question. You said that you made a point of going and talking to Dr. Don Shirley because you wanted his side of the story. Was his side of the story different from your dad's? How did he see this all unfolding?
It was not different, and that's what... but he did have certain restrictions of what he wanted in and what he didn't want in, and so I respected that. He was a very, very private man, so I don't know, he wanted basically just from, when my father met him to the end of what you see in the film, just what happened on their trip. His past, other things, family, he wanted that private, so he only wanted me to put in what he told me to put in, and he wanted me to keep out certain things as well, and that's what I did. So I tried to respect him, and I think we did respect him in every way, and treat him with the honor and respect he deserved. Quite a remarkable man, quite a musical genius, and I'm glad his name and music are getting out in the world again now, as well as the Green Book. People should know that Green Book existed. People should know Don Shirley existed. And hopefully people know about my father and the change he made and the better man he became because of this trip that he went on with Dr. Shirley.
You're about to go on a wild journey that will end at the Oscars. Congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you talking to me, and I hope people can get out and see the film.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Tony Vallelonga. If you haven't seen Green Book, I would urge you to do so. It would be great to see it before the Golden Globes and the Oscars comes around. Then we would all understand why that film was nominated for a Golden Globe and why it's very likely going to be in that big race at the Oscars. And next week on Mulligan Stew, the podcast, one of the truly great characters in all of blues music, Elvin Bishop, will come along, will tell us tales and stories about his life and times and his new album. Thank you for listening. And thank you for subscribing to Mulligan Stew, the podcast.